The vanity of the Third Reich's leader entangled the Sixth Army in extremely brutal urban combat to the point of exhaustion. By the end of the battle, in the ruins of Stalingrad, about 200,000 soldiers died. Soviet losses were significantly higher. The assault on the city was preceded by intense bombings that destroyed most of the city. The battles then moved to the streets of Stalingrad. These were incredibly intense clashes, characterized by the immense brutality of the soldiers. Exhausting fights for every street and almost every house were associated with heavy losses. The destruction turned the buildings into a labyrinth of rubble and ruins, creating ideal conditions for urban combat and defense, especially for snipers. Both sides suffered enormous losses. The harsh winter and continuous battles created extremely difficult living conditions for soldiers and civilians. Marshal Zhukov's not one-step back tactic was effective, engaging about 270,000 soldiers. The sacrifice of Russian soldiers allowed for the maintenance of a small bridgehead in Stalin's city. Despite the heavy fighting and such enormous losses, the Red Army managed to gather significant forces, including fresh reserves, and was preparing for a counterattack. In November 1942, Operation Uranus successfully encircled the Sixth Army. The German soldiers, now cut off and without support, had to face the harsh Russian winter and a growing lack of supplies. General Paulus, commander of the Sixth Army, faced a dramatic choice: attempt to break through enemy lines or defend his position in hopes of relief. The soldiers fought not only the enemy but also hunger, disease, and exhaustion. In desperation, they turned to acts of cannibalism to survive in the inhumane conditions of the besieged city. In January, the German situation became increasingly hopeless. With a shortage of ammunition, soldiers were forced to engage in hand-to-hand combat. Facing inevitable defeat, the morale of the troops dropped to zero. After 161 days of siege, the Sixth Army surrendered. Stalingrad became the grave for thousands of German soldiers. About 91,000 were taken into Soviet captivity. Most of them never returned home.